My mum's side, we are completely united. And my dad just never wanted a family. He wasn't interested in any of his children. I was living in the UK at the time that I met my trafficker. I was just turned 18. I used to see him around all the time. We lived in quite a small town, and he had come over from Albania, and I didn't know anything about Albania at the time. We'd been friends for years, and he told me I knew everything about him, or so I thought. He was a web designer, he was a great guy. And the year that it happened, I'd been in hospital and had a big operation on my stomach, and he knew that I was really sick and asked me to go on a trip to the south of France. We had a brilliant time. He told me how much he cared about me. He was incredible. 3 days into the trip to Italy, he sat me down and told me that I wasn't there to have a holiday, and that he hadn't waited for 5 years for me to just go and leave, and that he wasn't a web designer, and actually everything that he'd ever told me was a lie. He said that I had a debt to pay for him, and that he owed 100,000 euros to another gang, that a drug deal had gone wrong, and I was a sacrifice, and that's what you do when you care about someone. He told me that the only way to pay off that debt was for me to work as a prostitute for him. When he told me, it was like I was watching someone else, like it wasn't me. There was no way that could happen. And I felt so scared. It just wasn't real. I couldn't believe what was happening. I got upset and said, no, I can't do this. This isn't me, it's not my life. His face changed, and I knew I was in trouble. And when I tried to resist, he put his hands around my throat and slammed my head against the wall and told me how dare I ever disobey him, and that his word was law and he was like God, and I was never to answer back. And told me that if I tried to run away, or if I tried to tell anyone or ask anyone for help, or if I did anything wrong, if I stole from him, if I cheated from him, then he would kill me. Said the same about my family. So told me that my younger brother, who was a baby at the time, that he'd be taken and he'd be the one that got punished. And he knew where my family lived, and not to think that he wouldn't do this, and he had people everywhere. And at any time he could make a phone call and someone could be there to go and visit my family. He had a gun, which he'd already loaded, put it inside of me and told me, if I do something wrong, he's gonna fire the gun. So I got used to that, and he'd put the gun in my mouth, to my head. He'd ask me to choose between how did I want to get hit. Did I want to be hit with a knife or with a stick? He did that almost every day. Sometimes if I was lucky, he wouldn't do it. When he didn't hit me, he'd only have to look at me, or even just his words was enough to make me frightened. He could make me frightened from miles away, just to even think about him. The only hope that I had was that every night I would pray to God just to please keep me safe, not to let anyone hurt me, and don't let him kill me. Each night was anywhere up to 35 different men, And most of the time, what people think about who the men are that pay for sex are so further from the truth. The men that came to visit me, some of them were same age as me. Some of them told me that they had daughters the same age. Most of them with really good jobs. And a lot of them were doctors or judges, a lot from the army, carabinieri and the polizia. And all the people that could have helped and should have helped actually came and paid to have sex with me. So I knew they were never going to help. How can they be when they're part of the problem? And they treated me like nothing. The police and the carabinieri were the worst of anybody. I went to the hospital, and the next thing I remember is just waking up in a hospital bed with a drip and being told that I'd have to stay there for a week. He told me that I wasn't allowed to call my parents to tell them that I was in hospital, to just wait, and said that he was going to take me out anyway. But one day I managed to speak to my mum, and she begged me to find out what was wrong. And my mum had given me a code word and said to use it if I was ever in trouble, which was, "How is your Auntie Linda?" And that day she begged and asked me, "Do you want to ask how your Auntie Linda is?" So I'd asked her, how was she? Because he came into the hospital just before and smiled into my face, stroked my hair, so to everyone else he looked like a nice guy, but at the same time he was stabbing me in the leg with his keys, telling me that if I cause him trouble or if I do anything stupid, he'd kill me. So when I spoke to my mum, I only told her that he'd hit me, and her and my stepdad drove to Italy to come and collect me. So I managed to leave with them and get back to the UK. When I got back to the UK, I didn't tell anyone what had happened to me because I didn't know myself what had happened. I didn't know it was called human trafficking. My mum spoke to the police, and I managed to speak to someone from the unit that specialises with human trafficking, and he explained to me what had happened. I gave Interpol, Europol information of him, what he'd done, and they did nothing. The authorities didn't really know what to do with me because people don't generally get trafficked out of the UK. So there was no help. I was told, just walk away and rebuild your life and try to forget about what happened.